And we're now recording, and I'm going to start the presentation. All right, so there is my PowerPoint slideshow. Can everybody see that full screen introduction to 3D printing orientation? You can nod your head or give me a thumbs up. Do you see
Not yet.
it's not showing up? Okay,
Not for me, but maybe someone else.
all
Not yet.
right. Let's try moving this over to, oh yes, all right, I didn't start sharing. Here we go. All right, now you should be able to see it. Yes?
Yes.
So you
Yes.
see that introduction to 3D printing orientation? All right, fantastic. So basically, let's get started. So I'm Henry Groover. I live in Austin. I have two boys, one who's almost 15 and the other who's 6. I'm a software engineer, and that's my full-time job. I also help my wife with her online college. I really like making things, and I started out with 3D printing about 8 years ago, and I've made a lot of new designs. Um, I have many interests, including music, electronics, embedded software, computer languages, mathematics, linguistics, geometric origami, 3D printing, science, and engineering. So, typical, a typical unusual person, right? A geek. Um, I'm going to turn off the recording, or I'm going to pause the recording. Here we go. And we're recording again. So basically, the whole idea is that I want to record all the sessions so that if people aren't able to make it, then they'll be able to view later, and a lot of what we do is going to be on the forum. So if you haven't registered for the forum, you want to do that, okay? We'll also put links. These will be unlisted YouTube links. That means if you have the link, you'll be able to view the recording on YouTube. It will not be public, but if you share the link with someone else, they'll be able to view it. So I'm treating that as if it's a public video. So just be aware of sharing personal information in the meeting. The forums are all private. You cannot access the forums unless you register and sign up. All right. So what are some of the goals? I put together an FAQ. If you haven't already been there, it's good to go and view this FAQ. I've tried to answer a lot of questions. We want to help people who are completely new to 3D printing get comfortable with the basics and have fun with it. I believe that 3D printing is reaching a kind of a tipping point where when it first came out, I bought my first 3D printer kit, about 8 or 9 years ago, and it was a lot of work to get it set up and a lot of soldering and stuff like that. And it was like, wow, you got to be a real hardcore geek to do this, or spend, a couple $1,000s to get one of the commercially available ones. It's reaching a point where I believe that it's going to be a common part of the home, and people will be able to just 3D print stuff, and it'll be kind of like baking cookies in the oven, and kids grow up with it and they learn how to do it, and that's really the idea here, is to make it accessible. That's part of it. The other part is help you learn how to find and prepare models for printing. There are a lot of things out there. Some of them that are just fun things or cool things. Oh yeah, here's thing. I downloaded this cup here. It's called a cup of Pythagoras. I thought, wow, it's a cool 3D printed drinking cup, So I thought, I'll have something. Oh, but wait, I got to add more water to it. Let's fill it all the way up to the brim. And oh, what happens? I fill it up to the brim, and the water starts leaking out of the bottom. That's what the Pythagoras cup does. Yeah, see, that's a little embarrassing, isn't it? You don't want that to happen. That's an example of something that you can do with 3D printing. It's cool. It's kind of a trick thing, you know, but there's a whole lot more that you can do. So I want you to be able to have fun with it. And we also, a very important thing, I would like to help you learn how to use the free open source software applications to design your own models. And, you know, we'll go through some practical applications. Um, this here is one of my most popular designs, believe it or not. It's a adjustable shim. Basically, you put a screw and a nut in there. This was designed in OpenSCAD, and you can basically use a screwdriver to adjust it. And I've actually used that for carpentry projects and for leveling things. So that's an actual example of a useful thing that's shown up here as a little gray thing here at the bottom. How are we going to do it? We'll have a session that goes for a maximum of 1 hour every week, and we'll have a presentation, and we'll try to do some interactive stuff with software. We might need some additional sessions for assembly. You know, if you're getting a 3D printer, we definitely want to try to help you with putting it together. I personally just recently got the Ender 3 Pro and retired my old cranky 3D printer, and I assembled it, and I'm hoping that we can, you know, help you all get through that. Just a little bit of hand holding. It only takes a couple of hours, and it was actually pretty, you know, clear how to do it. You'll want to mostly be on your computer for these sessions, and it'll also help to have a webcam if you want to show things you've printed, or if you're in assembly and you're stuck maybe and you want to say, hey, take a look at what's going on here. And then questions, a good place for questions, you can always put questions in chat. So let's see if anybody has put anything in chat. Chat is a good way to do questions when there's a presentation going on. And you know, you can also just unmute yourself and interrupt. That's fine. There's nothing that's really deep that requires intense focus for the presenter here. I don't mind being interrupted if you have a question. Okay. But the forum here, I got a screenshot of the forum. There's a link. You go to 3dprint-training.org/forum, and then there's a register link. And yes, you did already fill out an application form. Most of you have already now registered for the forum. You do need to register. That's where you set your username and password, and then you'll have access to all of the different forums. And that's a place where you can post things, upload things, answer questions, and you'll also get assignments there. And the assignments are not going to be graded assignments. They're going to be mostly exercises to kind of take you through the different things that we're doing. Okay. What do you need? Well, you're going to need a 3D printer. There's a URL here. There's a shopping list URL, 3dprinttraining.org/shopping list, and you can just do that to get started. I also have a ready-made Amazon list. You know, if you haven't already done it, this would be a good time to go ahead and order your printer, okay? And there's some additional things also. We'll take a look at that in just a second. The shopping list breaks things down in groups, and we've got different recommendations based on your budget. You can spend as little as around $300 or as much as $500, really, if you just want everything. You do need a computer that performs reasonably well. It can be Linux, Mac, or Windows. You want to have about 50 gigabytes of free disk space. I would suggest at least 8 gigabytes of RAM, and a 3-button mouse. You know, so like your typical mouse that has 3 buttons. Most of the 3D software uses that middle mouse button. Okay, so that's really handy. It really doesn't work with the laptop trackpad. So just any old USB mouse, you can go to Discount Computers and get one for less than $10 usually, or buy one on Amazon. You'll also need a place to put your printer. Here you can see I've got a little tiny picture of where I have mine in the garage on a table. you know, if you're going to put it on the network, you can put it in a relatively unused space. That's what I do. I have it on the network. Um, if you're just going to go with the bare minimum setup, you need about 4 square feet of desktop space that's within 6 feet of your computer. And you need to have it in a place where cats can't sleep on it, because yes, they will totally do that, especially because it's warm. And you don't want small children to stick their hands in the printer, because it does move and sometimes moves unexpectedly, and the nozzle gets hot during printing. So think about those things. Start ordering your stuff. We're going to take a look at the shopping list in here just a second. So what's the timeline? You should order the printer now, and this is definitely the time to do that. You want to register for the forum and go to this is the URL, and click the registration link if you haven't already done that. You should have also gotten a liability affidavit. I just want you to sign something that says, yes, you understand there might be hot things here, and you need to be careful and not get hurt. And you know, it's not my fault if you get hurt. So it just, you know, we want to have a little agreement on that here. And then in about a week, we'll have our first Zoom meeting on core concepts and start assembly, because many of you should already have your printer to assemble there. People who already have printers might, you know, have other questions, things about slicing, for example, on your MakerBot. We've got 2 people with MakerBots, by the way. Rowan, Taylor, and Luke, you guys have a question?
Quick question, and I'm off the screen. You said that yours is in the garage. Is that a conditioned space, or does that matter? It can go in the garage in the heat?
Absolutely, yeah. It gets hot in my garage. It gets like, you know, up to 90 degrees, and it also is a little humid, but I tend to keep my PLA filament in bags so that it doesn't get exposed too much. I used to print everything in ABS, which is a little smelly and slightly toxic. So it was much more important to have it in the garage. Yeah, right now that happens to be my best available space for it.
Okay, thank you.
And then we'll start after that assembly, we might do additional Zoom meetings for the assembly. Just, you know, we want to make sure everybody's got things put together and things basically working. And then we're going to start Zoom meetings covering design and printing. Some of it would be finding models, downloading them, slicing. You'll hear the word slicing, and it's, you know, basically what you do when we take a model and get it ready for printing. And there's some, you know, kind of nuances to that. And we won't be using the same Zoom meeting ID and passcode as this meeting. It'll be a different one, but it'll be the same for all of them. So you don't have to contact me every week and say, hey, Henry, what's the Zoom meeting ID for this one? It's going to be the same for all of them, okay? So you just have to complete the form registration and sign that affidavit thing. It's an e-signature. It takes 2 minutes really, and you're done. You'll be all set. Okay. So I want to show you a couple of these things. Let's go back here and let us share, go back to Chrome. All right, so there's Chrome, and you can see this is Octoprint. This is running, you see this web page, this is running on a Raspberry Pi in my garage that has a camera looking at my 3D printer. So you're seeing a live image of what's happening right now. I'm printing a parametric music box in PLA using translucent green filament, which may not be your favorite color, but there it is. I like that because I can, you know, control everything from here. I don't have to go in my very hot garage to do anything like this. Someone was asking, is it okay to print? Yeah, actually 3D printing usually works better in a hot environment. cool environments, particularly if you're printing ABS, it's actually a problem if it's drafty. Daniel was showing his, I also had an enclosure when I was running ABS in my old printer. You know, it's ABS has to be printed at higher temperatures. PLA, the bed is 50 degrees Celsius, not that hot. It's kind of like, it's not even as hot as hot pavement gets on a hot day, particularly in Texas. The nozzle temperature is usually around 200 degrees Celsius, which is hot. So I wanted to show you here you go. So this is the forum. You can once you're logged in, you can see if there are other people logged in. I can go click on one of these. I could type something, or I could go in this topic and I could reply. It's really pretty straightforward. It's a PHPBB. It's an open source software for forums. The only people who are in there, this is not open to the public. It's only open to people who register for the course. I've also opened it to some people with TPPG and LASA with different forums that you might not see. And you know, I'm just trying to keep this to be a very safe environment. There are lots of forums out there, reprap.org and so forth, where you can get information and help on 3D printing. I wanted to just go to the shopping list and talk about that for a minute. So you've all should have seen this shopping list. These are the basics. I've got Amazon links for everything, how much they currently cost. This price keeps going down. I bought this when it was 300 bucks, and then in the next day it went down to 280 bucks. So I could have saved 20 bucks if I waited, but you know, that's just the way it is. You need a cable. And I'm also recommending you buy this little assortment of number 4 machine screws, because there are some things that we want to assemble. One of the things that I like to do, and let me stop the share here so you can see. One of the things that I like to do is I like to do stuff with screws and 3D printed things. So you can have nuts and bolts and nut traps. You know, so this is a thing, it's a little test object that I made, and it has nut traps. There's hex nuts that are trapped in there so that you can turn the screws, and this uses different sizes of screws. And that's all part of designing stuff so that it can be put together. Yeah, another really important point that, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this before. We were talking about the location, where to have your printer. You need a stable, flat surface. Do not put it on a wobbly table. It needs to be a good, solid, flat surface. Like if you look at my thing, I've got a Home Depot kitchen cabinet in my garage and I've got a piece of 3/4 inch plywood on top, and that makes a really solid surface for my 3D printer. Any kind of solid table. If you have it on the floor, you might get some dust in it, but you know, that is an option. But you don't want to kick it, and you definitely don't want cats and dogs to stick their noses in it. That could be a problem, okay? You want to keep pets out of your 3D printer. Anyway, shopping list. I also suggested, yeah, here's a set of cheap needle nose pliers. Let's go back to the screen share here. And yeah, here you go. So cheap needle nose pliers, useful to have if you don't already have them. A small screwdriver set. You know, it's good because, again, I like to show you how you can make things and screw them together, because 3D printers tend to build things in a kind of a stacked up way vertically, and sometimes you want to be able to put different pieces together to make different things. For example, let me show this. This is a work in progress. I'm making something which goes, which is meant to mount on a music stand, and you can put your cell phone on it to be able to record videos. It actually needs a little bit of work, but it's, as you can see, there's a lot of different things. These are different pieces that are printed and put together. I actually have a 3D printed screw that's also part of this. So these are the kind of things that you can do when you get creative with 3D print design. There's another one. Let me show you this. This is a thing that I had. This is articulated and the joints are held together with screws. So I can tighten this and I have a ball joint that's flexible. And these are, you know, so I can have this position a camera, for example, at any different angle. And this is all 3D printed with PLA, and it's just held together with these nuts and screws. Okay, so this is your kind of your shopping list. I've got engineering essentials. You definitely need a good digital caliper. I cannot tell you how many times I have been able to go and measure something and do a repair for something I might have to order for $50 or something, and I could do a replacement for it instead of having to make all those little trips to Home Depot for something that costs 20 bucks. They really add up, and having your calipers and a metric tape measure really helps. It's really essential. For engineering, metric is totally the way to go. Please forget about imperial units. We are not going to use imperial units. I do sometimes use imperial units when I do, you know, carpentry stuff, like I've built drilling jigs and things like that, and I sometimes use imperial units for that, but everything metric. Okay, so metric tape measure. You can also get a metric ruler if you don't have one. And definitely digital calipers that give you readings, and these will give you readings in metric as well as imperial units. If you want to do this setup that I have, you know, so like you see my Octopi setup, I've got the network. I have a Raspberry Pi. So basically, this is all the stuff that's on the shopping list. The little camera, the Raspberry Pi, and the power supply. And this is a 3D printed part that I've got the design for, and that's for the housing the camera. And that all goes together, and it's all free stuff. And this is free software, Octoprint, that runs on the Raspberry Pi and works with the camera and lets you see live what you're printing. And the cool thing, it also gives you time lapse, so I can view my old prints and see what the time lapse looks like for those, which is, you know, sometimes useful if you're trying to see what might have gone wrong, but it's also cool. So let's get back to that shopping list. So the Raspberry Pi board, you know, plus the camera module, plus the power supply, and then there's another little set of number 2 machine screws, which are really, really hard to find. So that's why I've suggested this. It's not a really great quality set, but it's on Amazon and it's available. And there are things where you need the number 2, the really tiny number 2 screws specifically for holding the Raspberry Pi camera. And you need a 16 gigabyte micro SD card. I think you can use a 32 gigabyte card. I don't know if the 64 gig and up are going to work with the Pi. Okay, but you can buy this. It's only $6, so that's not a big deal. $85 to make your network printer all network. And you can do this regardless whether you have the MakerBot replicator or whatever. It should work with any 3D printer, okay? Filaments are consumable. We'll talk about buying filament. You don't have to buy any filament right now. Good filament works really well, and you'll be happy to buy more of it. Bad filament will just be an incredible pain, and you will, you know, regret having to deal with it. So I have, you know, already some of these are not available anymore on Amazon. And then there's different materials. TPU is a flexible material. It's a rubbery material, which the Ender 3 Pro can print really well as well. It's different, and it requires different settings. So we'll cover that as well. So let's see. I think that's it. We went over the forum, and let's see, what else? Did we cover everything? I think that's it. So then questions. Do we have any other questions? So again, feel free to unmute and ask. Here we go. Yep.
We're just wondering if the weekly meetings would be on a specific day, like it's always going to be on a, whatever date it is and time.
Yeah, so at this point, I definitely, my best time is probably going to be this exact time slot, 6 p.m. Wednesday Central Time. And I'd like to keep it to the same just because we have a lot going on. My wife runs Zoom meetings, and it's very busy around here, and we're busy usually 7 days a week. But this is a good time for me. So yeah, I think it's probably going to be this time slot regularly. We might fit some additional meetings in while we're doing assembly and just see how that goes, and if people need a little bit more help with the assembly part. I put a couple of other questions up here that I answered, and if you want to drop out, you don't have to do anything. You might want to send an email to let us know, and then if you decide you're not going to go through with it, you don't have to pay anything. If you go through with this and it's valuable for you, then you want to give something, 20 bucks, 50 bucks, whatever it is worth to you, do it afterward. Don't sweat it. So and can you tell others about it? Yes, but we would like to keep it to people that are known. I don't have a lot of time to go vetting people. And, we've got middle schoolers and high schoolers here, and I cannot deal with the whole network of COPPA regulations and being COPPA compliant and all that. So I'm just keeping it to be kind of a closed, know the password, know somebody. Say, oh, Lynn sent me. And then I'll say, oh, right, okay, well, I know Lynn, she's a good person, and that's cool, so we're good. That's it. So any other questions? Because that is really it. That's everything here.
I have a quick, just logistics question about the forum, because we registered through my email. Is there a way for my two boys to have separate access so they can ask you questions, or should I just switch the email account over?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a good question. If you have them like right away register for the forum, I'll just add their usernames. I'm just trying to tie the registration for the forum to the application form so I know who's who. So if they go and do this right away, they can both register and then they can individually have access on the forum. And I'm just trying to, not have people register that I don't know about them. So that's, or shoot me an email and say, hey, I just registered on the forum. I'm with Jen, and then there's no mystery.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions?
I have a quick question about CAD. Do you have any recommendations for what CAD software to use for the course?
So yes, I am really passionate advocate of FreeCAD. Daniel has a lot of experience with Tinkercad, and he's already posted a lot of videos, and those are both free. Actually, part of my inspiration for doing this is that my son did in the ninth grade, he did the SciTech course at LASA, which is like a 1 semester. And frankly, I was just a little disappointed with it because, you know, I'm the 3D print design geek guy. And I thought, yeah, wow, this is really cool. They'll get to actually do something. And it was not so much. It was more about kind of team building stuff and solving some problems. And, you know, it had some value, but this is what I was hoping for. FreeCAD has a steep learning curve. And now they use SolidWorks. So I wanted to help my son with SolidWorks. And I said, oh, wow. So how hard is it to get a license for SolidWorks? Oh, $8,000. What? You know, my head blew up. I said, no way. And yes, they make these things available to schools and for students for less money, but wow. That's not what I'm used to paying, you know. I mean, we buy software, we use licensed software, but $8,000, forget it. Anything you can do in SolidWorks, you can do in FreeCAD, but you have to invest a little effort into it. And I would actually love to be able to help people with, you know, getting over that hump. And there are other things as well. So like everything you see here, this is all designed using FreeCAD. There are some things that are done using Blender. I'm a little hesitant to try to introduce people to Blender because Blender can be a little headache inducing. But there are lots and lots of videos on how to do stuff in Blender. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, I'm a strong advocate of FreeCAD. There are other things that I think are easier to use, Tinkercad, and there are others as well that are free. So, yep, there you go. But we'll cover all that and I'll have all the information and follow up. You know, the whole idea here was just to kind of give you an idea what the course is about, how we want to handle the safety and privacy issues of this, and then, you know, we'll schedule the first meeting. I'm thinking it'll be next Wednesday, and mostly it'll be every week. We might have to skip sometimes, and there will be assignments which are not going to be graded, but kind of, you know, a little challenge. I'm a firm believer in education should have two things. One is challenge and the other is engagement. And you don't necessarily need to measure to learn. And you just need to give people challenges, and if people are engaged and they take up the challenges, they learn. So that's my approach here. Any other questions?
I was just going to add a comment. A couple of things from my experience. First of all, get excited about this. This is very cool, neat stuff. The first time I discovered it, that I could like make stuff like this, it was like I was on a 3D printing forum on Facebook, and it was basically like Marty McFly and the Time Machine in Back to the Future. I felt like I can do anything. I can go anywhere. So it felt a lot like that. So go to thingiverse.com and play around and look for stuff. Every holiday these days, there's thematic, like Mother's Day comes around, all of a sudden there's tons of Mother's Day related stuff, or Christmas or Halloween. So, you know, find something fun that you want to do. Also with Tinkercad, at least, a lot of my so-called designs are really just modifications of other people's stuff. And that's how I sort of learned. You start out with something and then you can modify someone else's design to get started. So that was just a good way to kind of get up to speed a little bit, just to kind of have fun with it, modify other people's designs from Tinkercad.
Yeah, great. Well, and you know, Daniel jumped right in. Daniel's is a really busy guy. He's jumped right in and he put together the first forum postings, and he's put together a whole series of video links for using Tinkercad. So that's really great. And I would love to get participation from, from other people like that. But it's really so valuable having somebody who can contribute experience like this. This is all, value added.
Right. Yeah, they're not my videos; they're someone else's, but I found them useful.
Hmm.
So I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Well, and that's part of the value. There's so much material, and there are so many tutorials on doing something. For example, um, how to create your own screws in FreeCAD. So I found a video on how to do it. There are a bunch of steps, and it's like kind of like a recipe. But like Daniel says, this is very exciting, and there are cool things that you can do. I'm trying to teach my 6-year-old also about science with different things. You can do a 3D printed automatic transmission. You can do 3D printed convolute nested gears. There are just so many things that are, people who are critics of 3D printing say, oh yeah, you're just making trinkets and toys. But these are toys that are science toys, and they're cool toys, and they can actually teach something. So yeah, I believe this is a game changer. Yeah. And I think that, kids who grow up with this, are going to, look at their parents and say, what, you guys don't know how to design stuff for 3D print? So yeah. Well, any other questions before we close here? I'm sure there's a number of things that I forgot to mention.
Was there, and I might have missed it, did you have a certain number of sessions you have in mind? Is this like kind of ongoing, depending on responses?
I was thinking, it's a good question. I put this prospectus up here, and let's see, what did I say there? I had in my prospectus, I think I had figured about, whoops, wrong link. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so I was thinking about 8 or 9 sessions, probably. Yeah, and we might insert a few in the beginning to help with assembly, because I would like to help you all get over the hump of assembly. I believe that the Ender 3 Pro, if you can just be patient, assembly is all about being patient, having a clear space where you can lay it out, and preferably not over a deep pile carpet, and not with a cat coming in and knocking things off. And you should be able to get through it pretty quickly. I found that the Ender 3 Pro was well packaged, and it was only pictures, no words, only pictures. They must be shipping a lot of these things all over the world, and the pictures were good. So yes, definitely. I'm thinking around 8 or 9 sessions. But the thing is that the forum will continue to be open, because once you're in, you're in. We're not going to kick you out of the forum. And the forum is only ever going to be just for people who are in the course, and also some people who are in some of our school groups. And that's going to be a safe place to share and ask questions, and know who you're talking to. So any other questions? So again, I'm excited to do this, and I'm hoping we'll all have a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to getting started. So thank you, and I guess we'll end there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.